Think about the last time someone took more than their share. Maybe it was a colleague who stole credit for your work, a neighbor who bent every rule in their favor, someone who cut the line, dodged the bill, or walked away with more than they were owed. You felt something in that moment that you probably couldn't fully explain. Not just annoyance. Something older than that. Something that rose from somewhere deep. A hot, wordless conviction that what just happened was wrong. You didn't learn that feeling. Nobody taught it to you. And here's what nobody has ever told you about it. That rage has a history. A very, very long one. And for most of that history, it wasn't just a feeling, it was a system. A precise, ruthless, surprisingly sophisticated system that kept human beings alive for 300,000 years. Before laws existed, before courts existed, before governments existed. And the way ancient humans enforced that system, what they did to people who took too much, changes everything we think we know about fairness, punishment, and why justice feels like something your body understands before your mind does. Let's start with what most people get completely wrong about ancient humans. The standard image is this: brutal, hierarchical, dominated by whoever was biggest and strongest. The alpha takes what he wants. Everyone else survives on what's left. That image is almost entirely false. In 1999, anthropologist Christopher Boehm at the University of Southern California published a book called Hierarchy in the Forest. He had spent decades studying both primate behavior and modern hunter-gatherer societies, groups still living in ways that closely mirror how ancient humans would have lived. His conclusion rewrote what we thought we knew. Ancient human groups were not dominated by whoever was strongest. They were, in Boehm's word, egalitarian, and they enforced that equality with a ferocity that most people today would find shocking. Not because ancient humans were idealists, not because they believed in fairness as a philosophy, but because inequality, in a group of 20 to 50 people entirely dependent on each other for survival, was a death sentence. Think about it this way. You are hunting. The hunt succeeds. The meat comes back to camp. Every person in that group, the elderly woman who can no longer run, the injured hunter who tracked the animal for miles, the mother nursing an infant, every single one of them needs that meat to survive the next 3 days. If one person takes more than their share, someone else doesn't eat. And in a world with no food storage, no neighboring supermarket, no backup plan, not eating for 3 days could mean dying. The person who took too much didn't just violate a social rule. They put lives at risk, and ancient human groups responded accordingly. But here's what's fascinating. The response wasn't violent. Not at first. Not even close. Boehm documented what he called a reverse dominance hierarchy, a system where the group itself, collectively, continuously pushed back against anyone who tried to dominate, hoard, or take more than their share. And it followed a sequence so consistent across every culture he studied that it was clearly ancient, deeply ancient. Stage 1 was gossip. Not petty gossip, strategic gossip. The moment someone in the group was seen taking more than their share, information about that behavior began moving through the group immediately. Who they saw it, what exactly happened, how much was taken, whether it had happened before. This wasn't idle chat. This was social intelligence gathering. The group was building a case. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University argues that this is the actual reason human language evolved. Not to share information about food, not to coordinate hunts, to talk about each other. Dunbar found that in modern hunter-gatherer groups, approximately 65% of all conversation time is spent discussing social relationships. Who did what? Who can be trusted? Who has been seen taking advantage? Gossip, he argues, is the original policing system. And it was devastatingly effective. Because in a group of 20 to 50 people who never left each other's sight, reputation was everything. You couldn't move to a new city. You couldn't reinvent yourself. You couldn't escape what the group knew about you. Your reputation was your survival. Stage 2 was public shaming. If the gossip didn't correct the behavior, and sometimes it did, because the offender would become aware that the group was watching, the community moved to direct, open confrontation. Not a private conversation, a public one, in front of everyone. Anthropologists studying the Hadza people of Tanzania and the Kung San of the Kalahari, two of the most extensively studied modern hunter-gatherer groups, document this happening with remarkable consistency. The group gathers. The behavior is named out loud. The offender is told, directly, in front of every person whose opinion matters to them, exactly what they did and exactly why it was unacceptable. And then comes something that modern psychology would recognize immediately. The humiliation is held. It isn't released quickly. The group doesn't forgive and move on within minutes. The offender is expected to sit with what they've done, visibly, uncomfortably, in front of the people they depend on, until the group is satisfied that the lesson has landed. Researcher Daniel Fessler at UCLA has studied shame across cultures and found that the physical experience of shame, the dropped gaze, the hunched posture, the desire to disappear, is identical across every culture ever studied. It's not learned, it's biological. Your body produces shame the same way it produces pain. Because for 300,000 years, shame served the same purpose pain does. It was your body's way of telling you, what you just did threatens your survival. Stage 3 was exclusion. If public shaming didn't work, if the offender continued taking more than their share, continued dominating, continued treating the group's resources as their own personal supply, the group stopped sharing with them. No meat from the hunt, no help gathering, no fire in the cold, no protection at night. In the modern world, being cut off socially is painful, embarrassing, difficult to recover from. In the ancient world, it was a countdown. A person excluded from their group in a pre-agricultural environment, with no food storage, no shelter beyond what the group maintained, no protection against predators that hunted at night, had days, sometimes less. Exclusion wasn't a social consequence. It was a death sentence, delivered slowly, by consensus. And the group knew that. They chose it anyway. Because the alternative, allowing one person to continue taking more than their share, threatened everyone. Stage 4 was exile, the final step, reserved for the most persistent, most dangerous offenders. Not just exclusion from the fire for a night, permanent removal from the group entirely. Walk away. Don't come back. Bohm documented exile, happening in virtually every hunter-gatherer society studied, and skeletal remains support it. Ancient human bones found alone, far from any settlement, showing signs of prolonged isolation before death. These were people the group decided it could not fix. And here's the part that should stop you cold. In 300,000 years of this system, across every continent, every climate, every culture, there is almost no archaeological evidence of ancient humans executing members of their own group for taking too much. They didn't need to. The 4 stages worked. Because each stage was more devastating than the one before it. Because reputation in a small group travels at the speed of whispered conversation. Because shame, in a world where you cannot hide, is not a feeling. It's a sentence. The system was elegant, proportional, precise. And then something happened that changed everything. Approximately 10,000 years ago, humans began farming. Groups grew. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And in cities, a person who had been shamed, excluded, or even exiled in one neighborhood could simply walk to another. The ancient system, built for groups of 20 to 50 people who never left each other's sight, stopped working. And so, we invented something to replace it. Laws, courts, judges, prisons, a written code of rules enforced by strangers with authority, because the community itself could no longer be trusted to do what it had done automatically for hundreds of thousands of years. And in the transition, we lost something almost nobody has noticed. The original system was personal. The person who took too much had to face the people they'd wronged, look them in the eye, sit with the community's judgment in real time, in their own body, in front of every person whose survival they'd endangered. Modern justice is designed to remove that, to make the process abstract, procedural, administered by institutions, not communities. And somewhere in that shift, the visceral, immediate, communal reckoning that kept human groups honest for 300,000 years was replaced by a system that most people experience as slow, distant, and deeply unsatisfying. The next time you feel that wordless rage at someone who took more than their share, and they got away with it, you're not being irrational. You're running ancient software in a world that was built to make that software obsolete. For 300,000 years, the community handled it, swiftly, personally, together. We built something more sophisticated to replace it. The only question nobody has answered yet is whether we actually built something better, or just something slower,